What up, nerds? I'm Bryson. You can call me Bammed, and this is CTF and Cigars by Bam CTF, where I light up a cigar and I talk about CTFs, hacking, and other security-related topics. So today I'm going to finish what I started a couple weeks ago. So a couple weeks ago we had a CTF. So this was a CTF and Cigars CTF live stream through the whole thing. You should be able to see that in my my video history here on Twitch. If you're watching the video on demand that I'm going to post later on YouTube, you can go to the Twitch channel to see that. That's twitch.tv/CTF and Cigars. To watch the live stream we did through the whole thing. Anyway, so we did a CTF. It was a King of the Hill style CTF, and sorry, 2 weeks ago, I did part one of my walkthrough. So it was pretty short. I think it was a 6 hours CTF. We actually had some technical difficulties at the beginning, so maybe 4.5 hours actual play time. So not a lot of people actually got in and got some flags. I've decided not to show every exploit that was available in the network because I want to reuse them later. I figured if you didn't find them this time, maybe you can find them next time. So I'm going to hold on to a few, but I'm showing you the more obvious, what I thought were the easy ways in. So this was a King of the Hill style CTF, and I designed each server. There were 10 in total, with at least one, if not two or more, easy backdoors to get in and get to root. The idea being that people could get in, get root, and then you've got to lock the system down and keep other people out. And that's where some of the challenge and the complexity would kind of build out of that. So I'm going to show you some of the things that we did last week or last time. I showed you a couple things. There was a web exploit using a Bloodit. There were a couple things you had to do with that, and then there was also just an SSH key, and that SSH key actually lets you in, and sudo lets you. It was on every server, and it was with a user that had sudo privileges without admin or without requiring a password. So that was one like really easy way to get root on all the boxes. It was the SSH key was hidden in a Git repo that was hosted on one of the servers. It was a deleted commit that someone had made. Anyway, so we did that last time. But before we get into the easy hacks today, I am going to light up a cigar. So this week, let's see, I've got it's a Rocky Patel. This is the Vintage 1990. It is a Robusto, so it's 5.5 inches long. This is only 50 gauge. It is a Maduro. Love the smells of Maduros. Let's see, it's got a Dominican Republic and Nicaraguan filler. The wrapper is Honduras, and then the binder is Mexican. And this is a mild to medium strength cigar. So it's got a nice sort of cocoa nutty aroma with just a little bit of pepper to it. When you first light it, it's got a bit of a pepper bomb. So there's just a lot of really strong pepper when you first start, and then through the first third of the cigar, kind of milds out a bit as you go. Starts with, a bit of cocoa and cedar to kind of blend with that pepper, a bit of citrus. Then you get to the second third, the pepper bomb begins to settle down a little bit. Some of the newer flavors, a bit more citrus, some mocha, cedar, cocoa. It's very, very, very rich flavors. A little bit of leather, and a little spicy. It's a pretty complex flavor, but it's really well balanced. Rocky Patel makes some really great cigars. And then you get to that last third, and it's a little bit sweeter. The pepper backs off even more. Excuse me. And there's some a bit leathery and woody as well. So this is a pretty good cigar. Now, all that being said, I just got this and it hasn't been in my humidor very long, and I think it needs to sit in there longer. I've got a few more, so I'm gonna let them sit, because I say that because as I was sitting out here, the cap just fell off. That shouldn't happen. And I know these are good cigars, and they're well built, so I'm not going to blame that on the cigar. I'm going to blame it on the humidor and the fact that it hasn't been in one very long. But that shouldn't really, well, I say that the fact that came off has me a little bit worried that the cigar is going to start unraveling a bit as I smoke it, and that's never fun. So hopefully it won't be too bad. But we'll see what happens. Actually, I can see it's already kind of starting to unravel a bit at the end when I went to cut it. So yeah, this thing's gonna fall apart on me. All right, well, already cut it. Let's do this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and okay, my lighter is my lighter's empty. All right. I will be back in half a second. You can look at the door behind me for about a second. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I need to refill my lighter. I guess we could talk about that. Haven't really talked about caring for your lighter. So I've got a all right, so when you light a cigar, you don't want to use like a regular like a big lighter or something like that. The flames from those, they actually have a bit of a taste to them. They actually affect the way the cigar tastes. So you want to use a butane lighter because it's odorless and tasteless. So I've got this butane lighter here. I don't know if you can see, there's a little indicator there at the bottom. Those two little bars right there. They're clear. That means it's empty. So the first thing you want to do, you want some kind of tool. Now I've got this. This is a pipe tool that I use for my pipe. I haven't smoked pipe in a long time, but I have before. Anyway, you just need a small tip like that, and at the very bottom of the lighter, there's that little hole. First thing you want to do is let all the air out. So we're just gonna push down on that. Yeah, that was empty. All right, so there was a little bit of a hiss as just a tiny amount came out. All right, so that is completely empty. And then I've got some butane here. You can pick this up at any cigar shop or smoke shop or anything. And then what we're gonna do, we're just gonna, so it's got, the butane's got this this tip here, and it just goes right in there. But you want to do it upside down. So we'll just put that in there, push it in for a few seconds, let it out. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the levels here. All right, this should be good. And I don't know if you can see now, but those little bars there, they were clear. Now they're red. So this particular one is full now. Okay, so now we can actually light the cigar. There we go. Oh man, that's turned up high. Big old flame on that thing. All right. Yeah, it's a good one. I've like I said, I've had these before. I like these. Rocky Patel makes some good cigars. Okay, so let's talk about the CTF. So there were 10 servers that were all part of a game network that was being run by evilecorp.com. I'm just having all kinds of technical issues today. My mic's not wanting to stay positioned. All right. I need some more sleep. That's my problem. So the CTF, there were 10 servers. It was King of the Hill. They were all running some kind of game. We did like Assault Cube, which was an FPS. There was Crossfire, which was another FPS. Dawn of Time, which is a MUD. A MUD's a text-based multi-user dungeon. And Net Trek, which is the oldest internet team game in existence. It was the very, very first, and it's still running. There are still active servers. So those were the things that we had running. There was also a web server that hosted a list of all the servers that were involved. And then there was a hidden server that we called the Quirky Falcon that you had to find. So I'm going to show you how to get into the Assault Cube server, and then from there we can pivot to the hidden server, the Quirky Falcon server. and we'll take a look at that. Okay, so let's pull up a terminal, and let me find these IP addresses. So the Assault Cube server. All right, now this has a different IP than when we actually did the CTF. I've kind of reconfigured a couple things just so only I can access it. everything's down now. But all right, I've got this server. First thing I'm going to do is just nmap it, and let's see what ports are open. Now, I'm hoping that some of you found this and at least got this far, because I'm not sure I could make this bit any easier. There is this port open on 4444, and that is actually a bind shell running on the server. This is not the only server that had a bind shell. Now, it's the only one that used port 4444. Some of the other servers used different port numbers. Well, actually, I think all the rest of them use different port numbers. Most of them were high ports. Not all of them were ones that Nmap scans by default. So I don't know if you're aware, but the default action of Nmap, and you know, if you follow my advice and RTFM, let's see, where does it say that? Somewhere in here. Maybe it's on their website. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that the default action of Nmap is to scan the most common ports. So it's I think it's 1,000 most common ports. So it's not going to scan every single open port. So if you just ran Nmap like I did on some of the servers, you may not have found it. You would have wanted to use a different flag. You could have used the -p to specify a port, for example, and specified all the ports to scan everything, and you would have found some others. But at any rate, we have a shell here. So let's go ahead and connect to it. So we've got. We're just going to use netcat and 4444. All right, and here we are. We are in. Now, I'm not root. I still have to get root. It does look like I have sudo access, though. Let's see what I can do with sudo. Oh, okay. Yeah, my shell's not letting me do it, but that's fine. I'm not too worried about that, because there's other ways to escalate our privileges. So, and again, this is something I've done with several of the servers. So, first thing we'll do is we're going to check for SUID. So again, I think we've talked about this before about what SUID is. But SUID is one of the permission flags in Linux that when it is set, it will allow, I really need more sleep. Ugh. Okay. Sorry, I was up till 3 a.m. last night playing a role-playing game with some friends. For some reason, we do this on Fridays, and then I always want to stream the next morning and never get enough sleep. You'd think I'd make better life choices. But maybe next time. Anyway, SUID, when it's set on a binary, when that binary runs, it will run with the permissions of the user who owns the file. So if we have a file that is owned by root and SUID is set, so let's look here. We've got find, for example, so we can see that find is owned by root, and this S here tells us that SUID is set. So that means that when find runs, it runs with the permissions of root. So how can we exploit that? Normally find shouldn't have those permissions. This is something that we should be able to exploit. So to do that, we're going to go to a site here. Let me pull that up. All right, so GTFO bins. So I've been here before. I've shown you guys this because it's a great resource for privilege escalation when you find things like if you can pseudo certain things, if you can SUID, if you want to get a shell, etc. Great resource. But we have all these binaries. Let's find. There it is. We're looking for SUID because we realized that find has SUID set for root. And here's an example of some things that we can do with find. Essentially, what we're going to do, so we're going to find, and then so the format of find. There's the actual find command. The first argument is where you're starting your search. So find is a Linux command line tool that lets you find files. It's got a bunch of options. It's actually a pretty cool tool. There's a lot of things you can do with it. I spent about 10 years just as a sysadmin, and find is very critical for not just finding files, but for writing scripts and then executing things based on the files that you find as well. Besides using things like file names, you can also look at things like creation time, access time, permissions, etc. Like I used it a minute ago to find files that had the SUID bit set. So it's very useful that way. But then it's also got this -exec, which basically says when you find a file, execute this command. In this case, they're executing bin sh with the -p flag, and then so what it actually does is it's going to execute this. So this semicolon at the end tells find that we're done. That we're done with our execution command that we're passing to it. But we do have to escape that, or else the semicolon is going to be interpreted by bash itself, or our shell at least, as essentially a new line. So if you've so you've got to escape that. And then the -quit is just so we don't keep doing it. So find's going to keep finding files. If I'm in a directory that has 100 files, it's going to execute this for every single file. So what this -quit's going to do is we're only going to run it once and then quit. All right, now let's try that. And I'll tell you right now, this isn't going to work. And then I'll tell you why it's not going to work as is. So let's go back to our terminal here. All right, I'm just going to paste that command in there. Oh, look at that. It did work. Okay. Huh. Did I do something different? This did not work before. Oh, and I just crashed a shell. Okay, well that actually worked. I'm not sure. Well, it worked. I could have sworn earlier it did not work and I had to do something else, but it seems that it does work. So maybe I mistyped something earlier. All right, we'll give this a minute. All right, well, you know what? So it is on a cron job. The shell is set up where if it goes down, it will come back up. So that was something. If you did get in and you were trying to lock it down, you'd have to find, not only close the shell, but actually find the script that was running and kill it. But I actually have the SSH key. That's going to be a little bit easier. I'll just go ahead and SSH in, and you saw I already had root, so I'm going to go ahead and sudo and be root. All right, so we're in, we have root, and now that we're here, a couple things. So again, this one also had the SSH key, so that was another way you could have got in, and it would have got you in as the user Ubuntu. So you would have had to try it a few users, but if you tried the default user Ubuntu, which is the default for the AWS Ubuntu image, then you could have done sudo without a password. So that was another easy way to get root. All right, but let's look at the processes that are running. There we go. So this is interesting. There's this process called YOLOD. But if we actually look for that, let's just ls. Yeah, the file doesn't exist. Let's see if we can find anything with ls. So we'll do lsof. So lsof is list open files. Now I could just run that as is, and it's going to give me a lot of stuff. It's going to be a little slow, and so there's a couple flags I'm going to pass. One thing, lsof, so list open files, everything in Linux is a file, and that includes network connections. So lsof will show you network connections. Now the default behavior of that is to try to do reverse DNS lookup for each IP that it finds. So but that's going to take some time. So if I just run lsof, it's going to take it a few seconds. Well, it would if I had more network connections. I've only got one, so it didn't take very long. But on a busy server where there's a number of connections going on, it's going to take a few minutes. So a flag I often like to pass is -n. -n tells it not to try to resolve IP addresses and just print the actual IP address itself. And then the other thing I'm going to pass is -p, and this is going to only show me the open files related to a specific process. So we can see here, like this is the actual command. So this is what we're looking at is the these are open files for the lsof command. There's the process ID, the owner. There's some stuff about memory, and then and file sizes, and then the actual files itself. We see there's other commands up here, like here's bash, here's su. So there's sudo. So all these are processes that we're running, and then the files that are open related to those. But I want to look specifically for that YOLOD. So we're going to use -p, and let's try PID of YOLOD. Let's see if that works. That does work. Okay, so again, if you haven't, I don't know how familiar you're with bash, a $sign inside of parentheses is a way to like embed a command inside of another command. And the PID of command just returns the process ID or the PID. So the -p in lsof takes as an argument the process ID. Rather than looking it up and copying and pasting it, I can use this, use this $sign parentheses and then PID of YOLOD. So it's going to search for the command YOLOD, just return the PID. As long as there's only one, this will work. If there were multiple PIDs, then I'd get an error because we'd have two numbers being passed, and that's not how the -p flag works. Anyway, so this shows me the files. I'm trying to see if I can figure out where this YOLOD file actually is. It doesn't seem like I've got the file anywhere, but a couple interesting things here. We can see this is actually Perl. So just taking a quick look at this, at this lsof. So the CWD, this is the current working directory. TXT, this is actually, that's going to be the binary that's being called. So YOLOD is actually going to be a Perl script. So since it's a Perl script, Perl is actually the binary that's being called. We can see that here, but we don't know the location of the Perl script itself. However, one more thing that's interesting is this. This script is connecting to an IRC server. So this was your hidden server, the Quirky Falcon, and I haven't updated all my IPs here, but if we keep looking around the system and we look in Etsy hosts, so for DNS resolution on Linux, and even Windows has a Etsy host file, although it's in a different directory. I think it's C Windows System 32 drivers Etsy hosts, or is it just 32? I don't know. You can look it up. It's somewhere around there. But anyway, Linux is just Etsy host /etc/host. And so when you're doing DNS resolution in Linux, the first thing it checks is Etsy host, and that's going to overwrite any other options. And then it will try the local DNS cache, and then it actually will query your DNS resolvers, which are configured in etsyresolve.conf. All right, so that's DNS 101 for Linux. Anyway, so the IP address, now again, I didn't update it, but if you were doing this live, oh, actually I did. Now that I look at it, okay. So I told you that you want to look out for Quirky Falcon. I told you the domain name was quirkyfalcon.net, and I told you that if you go to quirkyfalcon.net, you will not find the server that's actually that I'm talking about. Rather, you will get redirected to a Rickroll. Now, I didn't set that up. What I actually did, and one of the CTFs we did last year, I actually redid, had used this part of the challenge. So there's a Perl IRC bot here, and this is an actual real IRC bot that we found doing our threat research here at Perch. And we found this, and it was connecting to a botnet, a real botnet. We monitored that for a while till their server got shut down to see what they were doing. And anyway, so we used this in a CTF last year. We built a botnet, and the challenge was actually to find the botnet and take it over so you can have control over the botnet. And we're going to do that here as well. That's going to allow us to also get at least some level of access on all the servers. So this bot was running on all the servers. It was connecting back to this botnet controller, this quirkyfalcon.net, via IRC. And if you could get in and take control, then you can run some commands on each of the systems. Some of them actually had it running as root. Most of them didn't. So most of them, it would have gotten you could have launched a shell, a bind shell, reverse shell, whatever, but not all of them. But not all of them are running as root, so you might have still had to do some privilege escalations, and most of that would have been done via SUID, like I showed you, I think last week, using base 64. There were a few other ones, so it wasn't the same SUID on every system, but at the very least, you could have found the user's password if you looked in Etsy Shadow, and each of those users should have been able to sudo if you had the password as well. So that was something that would have worked. So we're going to take a look at this. One other thing real quick. Let's go back to the backdoor account, and since I mentioned this, so let's see, I am backdoor. Okay, so I told you that find has SUID set, and so let's look at Etsy. Oh, I forgot this isn't a full shell. All right, look at Etsy Shadow. Okay, permissions are denied, but if I do a find and then exec, like that, there we go. So since find is running as root, it can read the Etsy Shadow. So that's one thing that to look for if you can't actually execute something that will execute a shell, because there are some controls in there on a lot of systems that will prevent that from working. You can still read files with the command if you've got a command that can read files, and then you can get that output and get the password. Okay, so we'll come back to the botnet real quick. Another thing, we've got this password, so we can crack that. So let's go to Kali real quick. So I've already copied this password. Let's see, that was Hunter, right? Yeah, there it is. All right, so I've already copied that there, so we can use John, and I'm just going to use the default word list on Kali, which is Rocky. Oh, sorry, it was Hunter. All right, so it's going to run a minute. Let's see. Somebody was asking if I have the link to the GTFO bin site. Yeah, I can. I'll throw that in chat. Hold on. It's gtfobins.github.io. Or you can just Google GTFO bins if you want to to do that. All right, so I ran it. We can see the password here is Hunter2. Hopefully you get that reference. If not, maybe you can Google that and learn a bit of internet history as well. Okay, so if you're logged in as Hunter with, Hunter 2, you can get root on the another way to get root on that one box. All right, now let's take a look at the botnet. So I've got an IP address. Let's switch back to my other terminal. There it is. All right, had an IP address. Oh, sorry. Well, okay, so that would have gotten us the IP address and all that would have gotten us into the IRC server. So okay, so we'll look at that first. There's our IP. I'm gonna open a new tab here in my my terminal, and I'm gonna launch a IRC client, and we will connect to the server. All right, there we go. So we're an IRC server. We get this little message of the day. The wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. If you don't recognize this, this is the first line or something like this. Every book in the Wheel of Time series, which is it's a epic fantasy series, 14 books. Most of them are like 1,000+ pages. Great series. I recommend reading it. Probably will take you a while, but it's definitely worth it. There's actually I think they're making a TV show about it as well. Anyway, super relevant. I will get back to why. But anyway, we're here. We're in the server. Let's have a look at the list. Okay, there's only one channel that we can see. This X. And there's this user, so I'm logged in as Perrin, and I'll show you in a minute why I'm logged in as Perrin. And then there's this XXXX. But what do we do with this? And we can sit here and watch it. Nothing's happening. We kind of need a little bit more info. So we're gonna go back. So we have this Hunter user. Let's check out their home directory. So we've already found them, and this is something you just would have had to have looked around. So we looked at LSOF. We looked at the actual, trying to find that YOLO-D file. Didn't have any luck, so you're just gonna have to look around for it. And in the Hunter directory, there is this file, and let's run the file command. So file tells you what type of file a file is. It says it's a Perl script, so we found a Perl script. Let's have a look at it. And yeah, we can actually see here, and if you go deeper into the Perl, this is Perl. I hate Perl. We're defining the variable here, but later this is going to be used, and it's going to be used to rewrite the executable in PS so that it looks like it is YOLO-D instead of home Hunter. All right, so a few things here. We've got the IP address. We already found that in LSOF. If you looked at netstat, you would have seen that as well. So that's a couple ways you could have seen that. I mean, if you looked at PS, you would have seen YOLO-D running. But there's also, if you always look at netstat, look at the interesting things, and that sort of thing. So somebody mentioned we use this in the last Perch CTF. Is this variation or the next time? It's a slight variation. I made this one a little bit easier. I turned on shell access. So last time we used the this IRC bot on the Perch CTF. I didn't have shell access on initially. Well, okay, there was multiple bots connected to the IRC server, and one of them had shell access enabled, and the others didn't. And it was a matter of looking through the IRC bots that were connected and finding which one actually had that shell access. So when you on that previous CTF that we did, there was a command you could run through the botnet to get the version of all the bots, and one of them reported a different version. Like I don't remember the details. It was like IRC bot plus or something like that. It was a minor thing, but that one actually had shell access enabled, and so you could send shell commands to it. In this case, they all had shell access enabled. All right, so to get further, we're going to have to look a little bit in how this ProBot is set up. Now, the first thing up here, we have our bot masters. Now, the actual default bot that we were monitoring, I think it only had 2. I've made a whole list here. And even if you hadn't logged into the IRC bot already, just doing a bit of Googling should have told you pretty quickly that these are all characters in the books from the Wheel of Time. The next thing to look at is that you've got this host auth. So in order to be a botnet operator, and let's look for this variable. Well, okay, we see the channel here, so we're already logged into that. We already found that. But let's look for this host auth and see how that's used. Okay, so what we're doing here, and again, this is Perl. I'm sorry, I didn't write it. It's Perl. What we're doing, we're parsing the command that is sent in a message to the bot, and we're comparing the host name portion of that to this host auth variable. Then we're checking to see where the message is from and seeing if it's from masters. And then if that's correct, then it'll actually execute the shell command here. So actually, and you can't just send shell commands to the bot. You've got a few things you've got to do. One is you've got to have your host auth. So your host name has to show up. It has to match that. And then you have to be one of the users listed in masters. All right, so let's go back to the top of our script here. We can see this is netadmin.quirkyfalcon.net. So this is something where you're going to have to do a little bit of research in IRC and figure out what this whole netadmin thing is about. And essentially, this is if you're the opper, so that would be like the root level or admin level of the IRC server. Your host name is set to this netadmin.quirkyfalcon.net. It's basically just a check to see if you know the opper password and you are opper. So this is where you're going to have to do some guessing and some Googling, and it's actually not that hard. I've given you a few clues. The password to be opper is all related to the first name in this list, Perrin. So it shouldn't take long. If you look up these names, you'll probably see pretty quickly that Perrin is referred to as Perrin Golden Eyes. So now back to our IRC server. We'll use the /opper command. It's going to ask for a password, and I'm going to use Golden Eye. So you would have just had to brute force that. There were some clues about what to try. When we did this before, a number of people got it pretty quickly. There's probably people who are already familiar with the franchise, but again, it wouldn't take much Googling, looking up those names and seeing, you know, Perrin Golden Eyes, and kind of going from there. So I've got a couple of messages sent to me. So this IRC server, if you're not familiar with IRC or if you've never used IRSSI, there's different windows, and this is telling me that I've got a new message on window 1 and a new message on window 3. If we switch to window 1, it just tells me that I'm now the IRC operator, and then Windows 3, now that I'm the operator, I'm logged into the oppers channel. All right, let's go back to, let's see, Win 2. Let's send a message to XXX. And let's just send it a command. All right, so now we've got a new message here on Windows 4. Yeah, there we go. I am root. Let's see where it's running. It's running in temp. And yeah, that's it. You can execute commands as root, at least on this server. Again, other servers, it would have been a different level of access, but you could still get a shell and then escalate it from there. And this was a real bot that we found, modified it slightly, just so you couldn't actually DDoS with it if somebody wanted to. You know, there are some built-in DDoS commands. Let's go back to the main channel and a little bit more about how this bot operates. So if you're in the main chat, so this admin channel, you execute commands with this !X before them. So I think there's a version command. Oh, okay, it says version not found. All right. Oh, actually, I think because I have, yeah, IPS on, it's just doing all that stuff. Anyway, yeah, see, if I just type who am I, it doesn't work. But that !X preceding a command, that way I can send commands to all the bots in the channel at once. So if I had 100 bots in here, I could send a command to all of them, launch a bind shell, whatever the case may be. Oh, and okay, so that gets us into all the servers except for the Quirky Falcon itself. So let's take a look at that one. So we've got our bots. We got root on this server. Found a couple ways. So again, that no. All right, let's scan the Quirky Falcon server real quick. Let's see what's running on it. So Nmap, first thing Nmap does, it does default options. It's going to use ICMP, do a ping to see if the server's up. If the server's up, then it will scan for ports. It's going to send a TCP send flag in order to establish a connection, but this is just a normal Nmap scan, not a send scan. So it's actually going to establish the connection. So it'll do the whole three-way handshake and then close it. There is an option for a send flag or a send scan, which only does the send flag and then a reset right after that. RTFM. There's a lot of other options. Okay, so we have a number of ports open. We can see we've got FTP, SSH, SMTP. There's a web server, and of course we've got IRC, and even MySQL is open. Let's get a little more information. We're going to add the SV to just get some version numbers here. And we'll see if there's anything running that's like obviously vulnerable. And hint, there is. I say obvious. I mean, if you're not already familiar with it, with a little bit of Googling of these version numbers, you should be able to find the vulnerability super quick. So we've got this ProFTPD 1.3.3c. This is the infamous Acid Bitches hack. All right, let's pull that up and switch screens. Here we go. So this is the Metasploit module. So again, you could just search for this in Metasploit and you'd find it. But let's take a quick look at this Metasploit module, see how this is set up. So this is written in Ruby. I actually haven't written anything in Ruby in a long time. Usually use Python, but anyway, it's Ruby's super easy to read. So we've got our class. It's a Metasploit module. It's for exploitation. Essentially, what this is telling us, we're including some classes here. This is for remote FTP. We're going to got a function we're calling initialize, and it's basically setting up all the info needed for the exploit. So if you use Metasploit, whenever you load a module, like an exploit module, there's a list of options that are available. This is where all that's defined. There's information about it also defined here. All that's there. And then we get to the actual exploit function, and it is super easy. So it's going to, just connect to the server. So that's going to be another function built into Metasploit. It's going to handle that. It's It's going to print to the status that we're sending the backdoor command, and then the sock.put. So the sock, we're actually just sending a raw sock command, and here it is: help acid bitches. Now, how is this an exploit? It's because it's a backdoor. In the actual official ProFTPD source code back in 2010, for a couple weeks, somebody actually was able to upload a backdoored version of the code, and it was out there. If anybody downloaded the source, I don't think it was actually in any like official released binaries, but if you downloaded and compiled from source during that time, then you were running a ProFTPD server with this backdoor built in. And how does that work? It's really simple. Let's go back to our terminal, and yeah, SolarWinds wasn't the first. All right, I'm not even going to bother with an FTP client because we're dealing with raw sockets here. Just going to netcat to it, and then it's okay. It helps if you spell things correctly. Has to be all caps. Acid bitches. All right, so what did that do? Did it do anything? Look at that. I'm root, and I'm in the root directory. That's it. And this was actually running on multiple servers as well. It wasn't on all of them, but there were a few that had this. If you scanned everything, found that version of ProFTPD, and all you had to do is connect to port 21 and type help acid bitches, and you are root. There's also a WordPress site running on this web server with it's a really old version of WordPress, has some vulnerable plugins. There were a few of those around. Let me check my notes, see if there was anything else. So brute forcing was possible. All the passwords were easy. There wasn't really anything hard. They were all in RockU. They were all near the top of RockU as well. Try to keep it within the first 1,000 or so, or I think for the most part. So you could have brute forced your way into probably just about anything. But between the backdoors, so there were some backdoor.phps on a couple servers. There was the ProFTPD server. There was the SSH key in the GitHub repo that got you in. There were actually some bind shells running. Between those, you could have gotten in and to any server, and then between SUID and in some cases, if you just had the password, you could sudo. Those would have gotten you into all the servers. There were other exploits available. Again, I'm going to kind of hold on to those, use them in a different CTF. Nobody got them, so I don't want to really, give all that away yet, because we're definitely going to be doing more CTFs, and I want to not waste that effort and reuse those things. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, just a bit of errata from last time. I was when I was using John the Ripper last week, last time. So I did it something like that, and I got output something like this. And again, I pretty much every time I do these, I'm up till 2 or 3 a.m. the night before, and I usually get up at 7. So I'm going to blame it on lack of sleep for me just not paying attention. What this is telling me is that I've already cracked this password, essentially. So it's got one password hash loaded, but there's no password hashes left to crack. So I've already cracked this password, but it's not showing it to me. And all I need to do to see that is run John with -- show and then the password file, and it shows me there the password. So I anyway, ran into some issues with that last time just because I was tired. That I'm going to keep blaming it on that. All right, I think that does it for today. And I think that'll wrap up our CTF and Cigars CTF for now. I may come back. There were some other things in there. I may come back to those later. But again, I want to kind of hold on to some of these exploits. So if you haven't yet, make sure you patch sudo. There was a vulnerability release for that this week. You can use it's a privilege escalation vulnerability. If you already had that, you could have certainly used it in the CTF if you already had the exploit, but it wasn't even known about until this week, at least not publicly. I'm sure somebody probably knew about it and was holding on to it. Yeah. Oh, and there was somebody did release a proof of concept this morning. I've been kind of scouring the internet all week looking for one. Been trying to do a bit of fuzzing. It's a bit of a pain to actually exploit, and the proof of concept that was released really only works on certain systems. You do have to brute force it a bit because it's a heap overflow exploit, so it does require some brute forcing to actually exploit. But anyway, so make sure you patch your sudo on all of your Linux boxes, because that is a pretty major vulnerability there. Anybody who has access can become root if they've got the code for that. Or again, it's not super available yet, but people do know about it. There are lots of people out there working on it. A lot of people have duplicated it, so make sure you patch sudo. And I'm probably going to go take a nap. So thanks for watching. Don't forget, next time you're in a CTF to always don't panic. All right. Yeah, I really need to get some sleep. Okay. Don't forget, next time you're in a CTF, try harder, don't panic, and always RTFM. I will see you next time.
The battle fight of insanity, a second